The jungle of Proxima Centauri B screamed with life. Kieran Frost wiped sweat from his brow as he macheted through another wall of phosphorescent foliage. 6 months into his xenobiology survey, and the planet still found ways to surprise him. The Interstellar Exploration Corps had dropped him here alone after his partner requested transfer, claiming the isolation was psychologically detrimental. Kieran preferred it this way. The undergrowth parted to reveal a small clearing, and his breath caught. A trail of iridescent purple fluid, blood, he assumed, led to a fallen figure partially concealed by massive ferns. Not human. The being was easily 7 feet tall, with limbs too long and joints too numerous. Its skin shimmered with a metallic blue-green quality, like fish scales but smoother. Most striking were the twin rows of bony protrusions running from its skull down its spine. It was Voidborn, the nickname humans had given the mysterious warriors who'd attacked 3 colonial settlements before disappearing again. Officially, humanity wasn't at war with them, but only because diplomacy had proven impossible. No one had captured one alive. The alien's eyes snapped open, 4 of them arranged vertically, all burning amber. Kieran somehow knew, hissed and attempted to rise, revealing a gaping wound across her torso. She collapsed back with a guttural sound that needed no translation. Pain. Instinct told Kieran to back away. Protocol demanded he contact headquarters. Instead, he set down his pack and raised empty palms. "I'm not going to hurt you." The alien Huntress reached for what appeared to be a weapon at her side, but the movement sent fresh purple blood poolsing from her wound. Her hand fell limply. Kieran slowly reached for his medical scanner. "I just want to help, see." He ran the device over his own arm first, showing it wasn't harmful. The alien watched with intensity, then gave what might have been a nod. When she shifted, Kieran noticed the scorched areas on her armor, energy weapon damage. Someone had tried to kill her, and recently. As he approached with the scanner, a distant whirring sound froze them both. The Huntress's eyes widened in what could only be fear. She gripped Kieran's wrist with surprising strength and made a cutting motion across her throat, then pointed upward. Seconds later, a sleek craft with the same metallic sheen as her armor sliced through the canopy above, hovering with predatory patience. Kieran pulled the alien under the cover of a massive root system as the craft's searchlights swept the clearing. Whoever was hunting her, it wasn't humans. It was her own kind. The craft lingered for 3 excruciating minutes before moving on. The Huntress's breathing had grown labored, her temperature rising according to Kieran's scanner. Without proper treatment, she wouldn't survive the night. Kieran made a decision that violated every protocol. He activated a small holoprojector showing a crude map, pointing first to their location, then to his camp several kilometers away. The alien studied it, then looked directly into his eyes. In that gaze, Kieran recognized something universal: intelligence, desperation, and a wary calculation of trust. She extended a 3-fingered hand and pressed it against his chest. Then, with what seemed like enormous effort, she removed a curved emblem from her armor and placed it in his palm, curling his fingers around it. Without translators, without common language, Kieran understood. This was more than acceptance of help. It was the placement of her life entirely in his hands, an act of complete surrender from a being part of a warrior culture. Carefully, he lifted her towering form. She was lighter than expected, her body structure different from human anatomy. As they disappeared into the jungle, neither realized they had just ignited the first spark of what would either become a revolution or their mutual destruction. Kieran's makeshift shelter was barely visible among the massive root systems of Proxima Centauri B's towering flora. He'd chosen this location specifically because the dense mineral deposits in the surrounding rock formations interfered with scanners, a precaution that now seemed prescient as he tended to the wounded alien. 3 days had passed since he'd brought her here. The Huntress, whom he'd started calling Vexira based on a symbol repeated on her armor, drifted between consciousness and fever-induced delirium. Her physiology was unlike anything in his xenobiology database. The purple fluid that served as her blood contained crystalline structures that seemed to reassemble themselves, suggesting an advanced regenerative capability. Yet the energy weapon that had struck her had somehow disrupted this process. Vexira's eyes flickered open as Kieran applied a bioregenerative gel to her wound. She stiffened, then relaxed, watching his movements with careful attention. "I think you're improving," Kieran said, knowing she couldn't understand his words, but hopping his tone conveyed reassurance. Your temperature's stabilizing. To his surprise, Vexira raised a three-fingered hand and touched her chest. Vexira, she said, her voice a harmonic blend of tones that seemed impossible from a single vocal apparatus. Kieran's eyes widened. He pointed to himself. Kieran. She attempted to repeat it, the name becoming a musical trilling in her throat. Then she pointed to the wound and made a slashing motion, followed by touching her own armor insignia and another similar one, but inverted. Your own people did this to you, Kieran said, understanding. You're being hunted by your own kind. A distant mechanical hum sent them both into stillness. Through the camouflaged covering of his shelter, the unmistakable silhouette of a search drone passed overhead. Vexira's four eyes tracked it, her body tensing despite her injury. The drone hovered longer than the others had, its sensors sweeping in methodical patterns. Kieran reached for his pulse rifle, standard issue, barely fired except in training. Vexira placed her hand over his and shook her head. From a hidden compartment in her armor, she extracted a small device and activated it. The drone immediately changed course, accelerating away as if receiving new coordinates. Vexira's shoulders slumped in what appeared to be relief, but the effort had cost her. Fresh purple blood seeped through the dressing on her wound. That night, as Proxima Centauri B's 3 moons cast shifting shadows through the jungle canopy, Kieran knew they couldn't stay. More drones would come, and eventually hunters. He began packing essential supplies. Vexira watched silently, then attempted to stand. She swayed dangerously, and Kieran rushed to support her. She was tall enough that his shoulder fit just beneath her arm, providing an awkward but effective crutch. Her skin felt cooler than human temperature, with a texture like polished stone. They locked eyes, his 2 meeting her 4, and something unspoken passed between them. Fear, determination, and a fragile newborn trust. By dawn, they had traveled 5 kilometers deeper into the uncharted jungle. Vexira's condition deteriorated with each step, but she refused to stop, communicating through increasingly elaborate hand signals that their pursuers were skilled trackers. When they finally rested beside a phosphorescent pool, she took Kieran's scanner and, with surprising dexterity, modified it to display a crude map of the region. She marked several locations with different symbols, then pointed to one that appeared to be a mountain range. Is that where we should go? Kieran asked. Vexira nodded, then placed her hand over her heart again before pointing to the mountains. Sanctuary, perhaps, or others like her. As darkness fell again, Kieran noticed Vexira studying him with an intensity that wasn't there before. When he offered her water, their fingers brushed, lingering a moment longer than necessary. She tilted her head, as if seeing him anew, not as the alien who saved her, but as something more complex and perhaps, despite their differences, something familiar. Neither of them could have known that their journey, and whatever was growing between them, would soon ignite consequences far beyond this jungle. The mountain sanctuary loomed 3 days' journey away. Vexira's strength returned incrementally, though Kieran noticed how she favored her wounded side. Their communication evolved through necessity, a crude sign language supplemented by drawings in the soil and shared experiences. He learned that her species called themselves the Turvash, and that the empire she had served spanned 12 star systems. Why are they hunting you? Kieran asked one evening, miming a throat-cutting gesture followed by a questioning look. Vexira's expression darkened. She drew a small circle in the dirt, a planet, and placed several stones around it. Then she drew stick figures and pointed to Kieran, indicating humans. With deliberate movements, she showed larger figures approaching the small ones, making a slashing motion. Then she drew herself, standing between them, refusing the order. You were commanded to kill humans, and you refused, Kieran said, understanding dawning. You disobeyed orders to slaughter colonists. She nodded, then added another detail to her drawing, a structure that resembled the emblem she'd given him, some sort of royal or imperial symbol. She pointed to it, then to herself, and made a gesture like breaking something. You betrayed the Empire, Kieran translated. That's why they'll never stop hunting you. That night, huddled together against the jungle's chill, Kieran became acutely aware of their physical differences, and yet of a strange harmony between them. Vexira's breath created a slight whistling sound through gill-like structures on her neck. Her 4 eyes closed in pairs, the lower set first, then the upper. Almost unconsciously, she shifted closer to him for warmth. Kieran felt a tightening in his chest that had nothing to do with fear or survival. something deeper and more primal, transcending species. When a nocturnal predator's howl echoed through the jungle, Vexira's hand found his in the darkness and squeezed. By the next dawn, Imperial drones had found their trail. Vexira spotted them first, three sleek machines that moved with algorithmic precision through the canopy. They fled, abandoning their makeshift camp and plunging into a series of underground tunnels that Vexira seemed to know instinctively. "You've been here before," Kieran realized, watching how confidently she navigated the bioluminescent passages. She nodded, then drew a symbol on the tunnel wall, the same one she'd indicated when referring to others like herself. Renegades, deserters from the Empire. The tunnels opened into a vast cavern where the remnants of a camp were visible, abandoned recently, judging by the still warm embers. Vexira's posture changed instantly, alert and wary. She retrieved a weapon from the abandoned supplies, a curved blade that hummed with energy when activated. A sound from behind them. Kieran turned to find three Turvash warriors emerging from the shadows, weapons drawn. Unlike Vexira, their armor bore no Imperial insignias, only the renegade symbol. What followed was a rapid exchange in the musical language of the Turvash. Vexira stood protectively in front of Kieran, gesturing repeatedly toward him. Finally, the largest of the three newcomers approached Kieran directly. Instead of aggression, he extended both empty hands, palms up, a universal gesture of peace. "Friends," Kieran said cautiously. That night, around a concealed fire in the depths of the cavern, Kieran watched as Vexira spoke animatedly with the other renegades. She kept glancing his way, and once, when their eyes met across the flames, something passed between them that needed no translation. Desire, recognition, possibility, emotions as elemental as the minerals in the stone around them. Later, when they were alone in a small chamber assigned to them, Vexira approached him with determined grace. Her four eyes searched his face before she reached out, tracing the contours of his features with gentle curiosity. Kieran's breath caught as he mirrored her gesture, his fingers exploring the smooth, cool texture of her skin. Different worlds, different biologies, and yet the same stars reflected in their eyes. The renegade camp hummed with tension as scouts reported increasing Imperial presence in the region. A dozen deserters had gathered in this hidden network of caves, each with their own story of defiance against the Empire's expanding cruelty. Kieran had become a curiosity to them, the human who had saved one of their elite huntresses. Vexira had changed since joining her fellow outcasts. Her wounds had nearly healed, and she moved with renewed confidence, often leading strategic discussions. Yet each night she returned to Kieran's side, their connection deepening beyond the physical. "We need to reach your people," she conveyed through their improvised language of gestures and drawings. "The Empire plans something big, more killing." Kieran understood the gravity of her warning. A human research outpost lay 6 days' journey across the mountains, if they could evade the Imperial forces now saturating the jungle. "We'll need help," he replied, indicating the other renegades. The plan formed quickly. The renegades would create diversions while Kieran and Vexira, accompanied by 2 others, would attempt to reach the human outpost. Vexira insisted on bringing critical intelligence, data crystals containing Imperial battle plans and weaknesses. As they prepared to depart, one of the younger Turvash approached Kieran privately. Through crude sign language, he warned of danger, not from Imperials but from within. Not all the renegades welcomed alliance with humans. That night, Vexira came to him with unusual solemnity. She placed both hands on his shoulders, leaning down until her forehead touched his, an intimate gesture among her kind. "Kieran," she said, his name musical in her voice. Then she took his hand and placed it over her heart, covering it with her own. No translation was needed. Their moment was interrupted by shouts of alarm. Imperial drones had found the hidden entrance. As they rushed to join the defense, Kieran realized with sickening clarity they had been betrayed. Chaos erupted as Imperial warriors poured into the caverns. Vexira fought with terrifying efficiency, her blade creating arcs of energy as it sliced through attackers. Kieran provided covering fire, his pulse rifle inadequate against Turvash armor but effective as distraction. "The eastern tunnel," Vexira signaled to him. "Now." They fled with the data crystals, pursued by Imperial hunters. One of their renegade companions fell to enemy fire, the other revealed himself as the traitor, turning his weapon on them. Vexira's reaction was instantaneous. Her blade found his throat before he could fire. For 3 days, they played a deadly game of hide and seek through the mountains, taking shelter in narrow crevices where the larger Turvash pursuers couldn't follow. During one harrowing night, trapped in a fissure barely wider than Kieran's shoulders, their bodies pressed together in the darkness, fear transformed into something else entirely. Vexira's 4 eyes glowed faintly in the darkness as her hands found his face. The kiss that followed was alien in its mechanics, but profound in its meaning, 2 different species finding universal language in touch and breath. Their coupling was exploratory, tender, and urgent with the knowledge that each moment might be their last. Afterward, as they lay intertwined, Vexira traced symbols on his skin, not tactical plans or warnings, but what Kieran somehow knew were words of affection in her language. Dawn brought renewed pursuit. They were within a day's journey of the human outpost when Imperial forces surrounded them on a narrow mountain ridge. Trapped between sheer cliffs and advancing warriors, Vexira made a desperate decision. She pressed the data crystals into Kieran's hand, along with her ceremonial blade. "Go," she instructed with unmistakable gestures. "I delay." "Not without you," Kieran insisted. Vexira's eyes held his for one eternal moment. Then she took his face in her hands and spoke words he couldn't understand but somehow felt in his soul. She pushed him toward a narrow path leading down the mountainside, turning to face their pursuers alone. Kieran ran, her warriors' cry echoing behind him, carrying both their futures in his hands. The human outpost rose from the jungle floor like an alien artifact itself, all straight lines and reflective surfaces among the organic chaos of Proxima Centauri B's ecosystem. Kieran approached with caution, his appearance shocking the perimeter guards. He was gaunt, wounded, and accompanied by a Turvash warrior. For behind him, having survived against impossible odds, was Vexira. Their reception was predictably hostile. Security officers immediately separated them, placing Vexira in containment while Kieran underwent decontamination and debriefing. For hours, he recounted their journey to increasingly high-ranking officials, emphasizing the critical nature of the data crystals and Vexira's defection. "She saved my life," Kieran insisted to Commander Eliza Morgan, the outpost's leader. "And she can save countless others if you'll listen to her." "She's one of them," Morgan countered, "the same species that slaughtered 3 colonies." "She refused those orders," Kieran said. "That's why they tried to kill her." It took 3 days of negotiations before Vexira was permitted to present the intelligence she'd risked everything to deliver. Using translation software hastily adapted to her harmonic language, she revealed the Empire's plans, not just for human settlements, but for all lesser species across 12 star systems. "The Empire believes only the Turvash deserve to rule," she explained, her words halting through the imperfect translator. "But many of us see differently now. We see connection possible." Her 4 eyes found Kieran's across the conference room, and something unspoken passed between them, a current of understanding that transcended their biological differences. The human leadership remained skeptical until 3 days later, when an Imperial warship appeared in orbit, exactly as Vexira had predicted. Her tactical knowledge proved invaluable in mounting a defense, and when a delegation of other renegade Turvash arrived, survivors from the mountain sanctuary, a fragile alliance began to form. In the weeks that followed, Kieran and Vexira found themselves central to delicate negotiations between species. Their unique bond became both symbol and substance of what cooperation could achieve. Yet privately, they faced the uncertainty of their own future. "My people will never fully accept you," Vexira told him one night as they stood beneath Proxima Centauri B's triple moons. "And yours will always fear me." "Then we'll make our own way," Kieran replied, taking her 3-fingered hand in his 5-fingered one. "There must be a place for us somewhere in 12 star systems." Vexira's upper eyes closed briefly, a gesture of deep emotion. "The renegades speak of establishing a colony beyond Imperial space. They would welcome you, welcome us." The proposal before the human leadership was unprecedented. A joint mission to establish an outpost in neutral territory, staffed by both humans and Turvash deserters. A place where differences could become strengths rather than divisions. To many, it seemed foolhardy. To others, the first step toward a greater alliance. On the eve of the Council's decision, Kieran found Vexira at the perimeter fence, her tall form silhouetted against the riot of bioluminescent jungle life. "Whatever they decide," he said, "my path is with you now." She turned, all four eyes luminous in the darkness. "And mine with you," she replied, her translator unnecessary for those words. Their embrace bridged worlds, her cooling skin against his warmth, his shorter frame against her height, two heartbeats finding rhythm together despite different biologies. Around her neck hung the emblem he had once carried for her. At his hip, her ceremonial blade, symbols of identities both relinquished and transformed. Dawn brought news. The Council had approved the joint mission. As preparations began for departure, Kieran and Vexira stood together at the shuttle bay, watching humans and Turvash working side by side, awkward, cautious, but willing. "We begin something new," Vexira said, her voice carrying the harmonics of hope. Kieran nodded, his hand finding hers as they faced the uncharted future together. Something beautiful. Behind them, two worlds negotiated peace. Before them, the stars awaited, and the promise that differences could become not obstacles but gateways to deeper understanding. Their impossible bond had sparked a revolution, not of weapons, but of hearts and minds, and in that they had found victory more profound than any empire could claim.